Joining us now is Chris Nwokobia, who is a convener of Country First Movement and also a member of the All Progressives Congress. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
My pleasure to be here.
Well, you have heard, I mean, I'm sure you've listened to that background report there, you know, detailing the reason the Avengers are going back to the creeks and they're threatening to bomb this time around. What were your thoughts when you heard of their threat?
I think that the threat is not right. I think that it is not good for the country at this point. I think that it is not even good for the Niger Delta space because the flora and the fauna of the people of the space will be destroyed. I've said repeatedly that what government must do is to turn the Niger Delta space to a huge construction site. You know, a famous American criminologist once said that the society prepares the crime, the criminal commits it. The tragedy of the Niger Delta story is the fact that consistently government has done more of talking, more of engagement in terms of negotiation than practical action. And that's why the Niger Delta Avengers have something they can latch on to threaten the space and threaten the economy. I have said repeatedly that Operation Red Economy is not good for the people, it's not good for the country, it's not good for anybody. But what we must do as a nation and as a people is to not only talk, but walk the talk.
In the light of saying it is not right, but given the instance that you talk about, that the society prepares the crime, but the criminal commits it, is it justified?
No,
Their threat, is it justified?
You cannot justify any act of violence. I believe in proactive engagement of leadership. I believe in talking with government. You know, because the cost of violence, the cost of conflict, it's almost far more humongous than what dialogue does. I have repeatedly said, and I did say at some point when I was called to address the amnesty committee when it was set up, I did talk to the committee as to turning, rather than paying stipends or giving money to the young boys, the militants, what you do is turn that space to a massive center of infrastructural development. When you do that, mothers will talk to their boys, fathers will talk to their children, the community leaders will talk to the people, and what will be the argument? Government is doing profound. Government is engaging us. Government is building roads, building schools, building bridges. So you take away from them the fillip to do conflict. You take away from them the reason to do violence. You take away from them the reason to threaten the space. But unfortunately, consistently, what government has done is talk to the people. What government has done is propaganda. What government has done is to engage the elders, whereas the young people who otherwise have always resorted to violence to attract government attention will almost always continue to threaten the space. So I do sincerely believe that the first thing we must note is that it is wrong to threaten the economy. It would do colossal damage to the space in terms of their mineral resources, in terms of their agricultural resources, in terms of the health of the people. And then it would do colossal damage to the economy, and it's a lose-lose. But when we proactively engage government, when we proactively talk to government, and then government, beyond the talk, decides to do or keep to the terms of its promises. Because remember, Malcolm, as we talk, that when this government came into place, it promised that it was going to clean Ogoni land. And almost 2 years after, there's no proactive work, no effective work, no effectual work in that space. And you ask yourself why the boys wouldn't have a reason to threaten the space. But I do sincerely believe that everybody who truly cares about our country must begin to prevail and intervene, must begin to talk to the people so that our young brothers and sisters in the Niger Delta will understand that peace first is necessary for development.
I'm just looking at the reasons that they have given, you know, for taking on the second threat. I mean, this government understands more than any other government should in terms of the damage that the Avengers can carry out, because they experienced it in the first year of the administration, and they saw just how many, you know, how much barrels they lost, and also the price and how it was affected, you know, how their revenues were affected by that. Maybe we should put that off just quickly. So now looking at how things progress in that instance then, in terms of the threat that these people can carry out, when you look at their reasons and, the fact that they're saying that it would seem that this government has lost confidence in the abilities of PANDEF to broker peace. What are your thoughts in that regard, considering that now even the Niger Delta elders have come in to try and intervene?
There is a disconnect between the young elements in the Niger Delta and the elders. Their argument is that every so often the elders lead in negotiation. They almost always talk about themselves rather than about the people. I have read threats and I've read about their disappointment with the Edwin Clark Committee, PANDEF, and I've read about their saying that, oh, they pandered towards the Tompolo card and several other things. But I do sincerely believe that what the Niger Delta space needs is development, not handouts. My mentor, Martin Luther King Jr. once said that true compassion is not tossing a coin at a beggar, but ensuring that the estate, that the edifice that produces beggars, that churns out beggars, is pulled down. In this context, that we either restructure or ensure that the National Assembly speeds the process of passing the PIB, the Petroleum Industry Bill, into law. There's certain normative that we cannot wish away. Save and accept will create fairness, justice, and equity. Save and accept will give to the people who produce the wealth sufficient reason for which to stay quiet. They will continue to threaten the space. And I do sincerely believe that those who advise government, those who are at the level of governance, those who are at the National Assembly, must begin to speak up and do what is needful, which is ensuring that the legal regime favors the development of that space.
But would you say that they have given enough time for government to act? You understand just how slowly and how difficult it is for the machinery of government to spring into action in some instances, especially when it comes to issues of development. We've seen the Niger Delta Development Commission. We have a ministry for the Niger Delta, and we also see some little intervention agencies every now and again, sometimes created by the states. For instance, in Delta State there is the SOPADEC. You have to ask, is it that the machinery of government is not moving as fast as it can, or is it that people doubt the sincerity of these agencies of government?
Well, I think that the way to see it, because oftentimes, and I read my elder brother's piece, how governance could grind slowly, and he talked about what Empiricus wrote, how the meal of the gods grinds slowly. When you are sick, the first thing you do is attend quickly to your health. Mark the word quickly. And when the Niger Delta sneezes, the country catches cold, because over 90% of our resources comes from that space. So the tranquilizing drug of gradualism cannot come in as an excuse. When you understand that that is where you get your food from, that is where you get your stay from, that's where you get your survival from, you will be proactive, you'll be effective, and you treat issues that pertain to that space with alacrity. And unfortunately, that's not what government and leadership is doing today. And that's exactly why I'm saying that those who are around Mr. President and those who are at the level of the National Assembly, those who matter in terms of policy articulation and policy making, must step up the ante.
But
they must nudge the process of development in that space.
Would that really be a fair representation? I mean, when you think about some of the works that have been going on, they only recently we heard that a road that has been left not constructed for 30 years, where I think we have the Bunny Road. Yeah. They've gone into some partnerships to try and construct that road. You also have jobs here and there. The Niger Delta Development Commission is always advertising what it has done so far so good in the Niger Delta area. You also find some other, the state governments too are also saying they're pulling their weight. So precisely where would you say that government is failing in addressing the needs of those people?
But stipends will not assuage a hungry man. Tips will not assuage a suffering being. I agree the government is doing some things, but you must do more, because that's where the goose comes. That's where the wealth comes from. And then I say this advisedly, you cannot extricate the NDDC and allied agencies, like you mentioned, from blames, because I'm aware that since 1999, efforts have been put in terms of what is written on paper to develop that space. But tragically, well over 870-something billion has been spent by the NDDC without concrete impact on the people. Agree that, but who do you hold responsible? The federal government supersedes and superintends it.
No, what I'm talking about.
I think that
the period I'm talking.
I'm coming to where you're.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Then.
The period I'm talking about is the period from when the vice president visited. I mean, this is not the first time they're issuing a threat. The vice president was in the Niger Delta to try and assuage feelings, to calm the nerves down, and it would seem that to a large extent they listened to him and granted him there was a ceasefire, as it were. And in the time from the time of that declaration of a ceasefire till now, some of the steps that we've seen being carried out, would you say that they're insufficient? I mean, this is on the part of the federal government and even the state governments as well. And talking about infrastructure development, not stipends.
Now, let me say this. If you look at the period of dialogue with the vice president, and then when the ceasefire came into effective protocol and programmatic, then, and you understand that one of the reasons the Niger Delta Avengers have given is the takeoff of the university, the Maritime University, and the date for the takeoff is past and is not taking off. Some major concrete issues. There are certain issues that when you attray, you understand that government can effectively attend them without so much protocols and so much delay. The university was almost completed before now. And now that government is there, what is holding down the takeoff? That's one of their reasons.
Yeah, but looking at also the controversy around the name of the university, I mean, when you look at the conflict...
How long will it take to amend the name? How long will it take to adjust that?
Within the communities, you have heard and you've also seen...
You have engaged them.
Amongst the communities, how they cannot agree as to where, what the name should be.
No, but it's already cited, and then what you do, understanding the reality, understanding the urgency of the space, is to engage them proactively. I think that there is no excuse for certain things that have not been done, and I do sincerely think that understanding the gravity of impact that any violence in that space will have on our enterprise, government must step up the ante and attend that space with alacrity.